In the early series of the early colonial period, we came across Robert Campbell, a banker, a boat builder, wealthy merchant and prominent Sydney-sider and member of the Legislative Council. Robert Campbell's career continues in the late colonial period as he gathers more wealth to himself and has a higher level of influence to the power brokers of the New South Wales colony. I'm Michael Bishel, Australian historical fiction writer, and again we revisit this remarkable man who had his roots in the primitive period of New South Wales before Macquarie came in 1820. He established himself as a merchant, and for those of you who know Sydney, Campbell's Cove on the western side of Circular Quay is a prominent landmark. Now, up to the 1960s, the only institution which would award degrees in arts and engineering, and at the same time to gain an officer's commission in the Australian Army, was at Duntroon Military Academy in Canberra. The background of this training facility was a cottage owned by Robert Campbell, and his property was called Duntroon. The land is part of the limestone plains, and there were people there who lived who had grants of land in the period before 1832, or they bought the land from the original owners. In the report of the Select Committee on Immigration, it refers to James Ainsley, who was Robert Campbell's overseer. Ainsley left Bathurst with sheep in search of land on which Campbell conferred the name of Duntroon. In that year, Campbell took up 4,000 acres, adding another 1,000, and in 1829 increased it to 8,000 acres in the 1830s. Now, Charles, Robert Campbell's son, ran Duntroon like an English estate. But here's the difference. Instead of convicts, Campbell imported Scottish Highlanders to work his estate. Now, this was quite radical, very radical, because he believed that aspiration of workers was to be cultivated and rewarded, and he wanted the Scottish Highlanders to have an ownership of his estate. In fact, he built cottages on his estate and allowed each farmer 2 acres to grow their own food and graze a dairy cow. A far-sighted man understood the fact of aspiration and how that would grow people's wealth. By 1838, Charles Campbell was employed at 68 to 73 workers. The day's work would entail the shepherd, who took 1,000 sheep at daybreak for pasturing, and in the evening would brought them back to the home station where they were in the sheds for the night. This was another great example of a fine Australian who understood that by employing workers rather than convicts on his estate would grow wealth from within, having nurtured a sense of investment, ownership and aspiration within the workers. We must remember that Campbell did all this prior to the transportation of convicts ending in 1840. Perhaps he was prescient in knowing that convict transportation would not go on indefinitely, and he needed to plan for an alternative source of labour. Not only labour to provide him with his goods and services, but labour that was motivated to grow with him and to develop its own sense of ownership and wealth creating possibilities. A great man. Robert Campbell, a great character from the primitive, the early colonial, and now the late colonial period of New South Wales. We'll have more people and wonderful characters in the videos ahead, so keep watching. I'm Michael Bishel, signing off for now. Thank you.